out on the whole, whose lives are shrouded in mystery, and they want to hide their secrets.
Yes.
And
that there are two truths. The first truth is that the conversation, I'm told and I believe.
Listen up, because in the next few minutes you're going to walk away with 3 things most people arguing about this story don't have. The original 1997 magazine detail that kicked this all off, the exact points where timelines don't line up, and a checklist you can use to decide for yourself whether this is a harmless Hollywood age gloss or a deeper credibility problem that spills into the royal record.
A series dedicated to dissecting the most riveting royal scandals in history. This week, I'm joined by Tom Bauer, author of Revenge, Meghan, Harry, and the War Between the Windsors, the defining...
And if you stay to the end, I'll show you the single question that cuts straight through the noise and forces a real answer. Here's the spark. 1 page, printed in 1997, sitting in a teen magazine archive.
I do, and I think it has divided the nation and made us all, many of us, very unhappy on either side of the argument. I just found that Harry and Meghan, having said that they were setting up in California to spread wellness and love and sincerity, have done the exact...
For decades. Not a tweet. Not a rumor. Ink. Paper. March 1997, 17 magazine runs a Future Stars to Watch style feature. On page 90, it lists Meghan Markle, age 21. Stop the tape. If the official biography is right and Meghan was born August 4th, 1981, then in March 1997...
You have extraordinary reporting in your book on what this was likely based on and how it doesn't match up to what Meghan said. Here's the clip, SOT 6, from the Oprah interview.
In those months when I was pregnant...
She wasn't 21, she was 15. That's a 6-year swing. And before anyone says typo, think about how errors usually work in this space. If someone fudges, they round down, not up. So either a national magazine catastrophically misreported a basic fact in print when she wasn't famous and there was no PR machine hovering, or it printed what it was told. That doesn't prove anything by itself, but it does force a question. Why does an obscure page from the 90s say something so wildly different from the official story? Now, zoom out. Hollywood has always had a strange, often brutal relationship with age, especially for women. You know the playbook. Mid-20s actors playing teenagers, late-20s actors being told they're too old to be the love interest opposite a 48-year-old action lead. Everyone knows people shave a year or 3 on a casting sheet because the industry punishes honesty. If that's all this is, then say it plainly. Like a lot of actors, I rounded down early in my career. That admission would be awkward for a day and forgotten in a week. But this isn't just a casting sheet anymore. It's a question pressed up against the most record-obsessed institution on earth, the British monarchy, because if you carry a Hollywood bio tweak into a family that calibrates legitimacy by dates, documents, and lineage, the stakes change. You're not just curating an image, you're stepping into a constitutional story where the exact year on a birth certificate isn't trivia, it's part of the historical record. And that's why a dusty magazine page matters more than it should. Not because the page is proof of a lie, but because it's a stubborn, physical contradiction that asks for a straight answer and doesn't get one. Let's talk about testimony. Not tabloids, not anonymous sources, a parent. Thomas Markle, however you feel about him, isn't a random commenter. He's the person who can say, I was there this year at that school for this milestone. When he says the public timeline doesn't match his memory, that lands differently. It doesn't make him automatically right. Families feud, people misremember, but it raises the bar for clarity. The more you hear him talk about grades, graduations, and early acting years, the more it stops sounding like gossip and starts sounding like a plea. Tell the story straight. Again, he could be wrong. But if he is, there's a simple fix. Show the documents that settle it. Once, cleanly and publicly. And here's where the royal machine enters. The palace vets everything. When Kate dated William, genealogists mapped branches most of us didn't know existed. That's not scandal. That's standard. So how does a 6-year discrepancy, printed in a mainstream American magazine, avoid triggering a hold on, what's this? Moment. 2 options, neither comforting. 1. The vetting failed, which would be astonishing given the stakes. 2. It didn't fail. Someone saw it, considered it irrelevant, and moved on, calculating that modern image would drown out old ink. Either way, the public gets stuck in the worst place to be. Uncertainty, let's be honest about the pregnancies, too, because the same fog rolls in there. If the official 1981 birth year is accurate, Archie's 2019 pregnancy was later 30s, medically higher risk but common and totally plausible. If that 1997 page is somehow closer to reality, you're talking early 40s, where risk and scrutiny increase and public curiosity spikes. That curiosity intensified because of how controlled the information felt. Tight hospital secrecy, conflicting details about timing, and in Harry's memoir, serene wellness birth imagery that many mothers and clinicians said doesn't square with typical protocols for high-risk cases or epidural timelines. None of that proves wrongdoing. But it does explain why reasonable people ask reasonable questions, and why those questions won't die until the record is consistent. And look, this isn't about shaming a woman for managing a career in a ruthless industry. It's about consistency, when your brand is authenticity. Meghan and Harry built a whole media strategy on our truth, transparency, speaking plainly about power and the press. If that's the brand, then the bar for clarity sits higher, not lower. You can't claim radical honesty while leaving glaring chronological knots tied for years. Say the quiet part out loud if it applies. Hollywood encouraged me to round down. I did. Here's what's true now. Here's the paperwork. That would land better than 1,000 carefully worded statements that dance around specifics. Oh, what are the actual pressure points? Here's the checklist I promised so you can judge claims without getting dragged by the algorithm. 1. The 1997 page. Does it exist? Yes, archivists say it does. Does it prove deception?
No.
It proves contradiction. Contradictions demand explanation, not cancellation. Point 2. Early career documentation. School records, graduation programs, union paperwork. Do they align with the official 1981 birth year? If yes, this deflates fast. If no, the questions intensify. Point 3. Palace vetting. Is there any acknowledgement that unusual discrepancies were reviewed? If the answer is we don't comment, fair enough, but silence doesn't build trust. Point 4. Birth narratives. Do the public details align with common medical practice for the risk category? If memoir moments conflict with standard procedure, is that poetic license or something else? The adult answer is, here's what we got right, here's what we got wrong. 5. Parent testimony. Families are messy. But when a parent calmly says the public timeline doesn't match and no documentary rebuttal is offered, the conversation lingers. Now let's count the counterarguments, because fairness matters. First, magazines make errors. Absolutely true. Second, actors tweak age to survive casting bias. Also true. Third, people are entitled to medical privacy. Completely true. None of those truths erase the tension. They just explain how it could have happened without malice. And if that's the case, say it. It was a magazine error. Here are the documents. I shaved a few years off early on. Here's the correction. We kept medical details private for health and safety reasons. Here's what we can confirm without compromising that. That's what accountability looks like without violating privacy. Here's the bigger lesson most folks miss. When institutions and celebrities duck specific, documentable discrepancies, they don't protect the narrative, they supercharge it. Ambiguity is rocket fuel. One unresolved page from 1997 spawned years of speculation that could have been defused by a single clean, verifiable, on-the-record clarification. And if you're thinking, why should she have to? You're right in theory. In practice, when you operate at the intersection of monarchy, media, and money, clarity is currency. The public either gets receipts or it keeps receipts. Let me open a loop and then close it. The loop. What if the Duchess we think we know is, in part, a character built for two worlds, Hollywood and the palace, and the seam where those worlds meet is where the timeline frays? If so, the question isn't gotcha, it's, how much character work is the public comfortable with before it becomes misrepresentation? That's a conversation bigger than one person. It's about how we treat biography in the age of personal branding, and now the close. Everything you've heard tonight reduces to one precise hinge question that cuts through politics, PR, and parasocial loyalty. It's not about who you like or who you don't. It's this. When presented with a specific, dated, printed contradiction about a basic biographical fact, do the people involved resolve it with documents or with vibes? If it's documents, we move on. If it's vibes, the story sticks as, oh, here's what I want you to do. Drop a comment with 2 answers.